Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Look, there are a lot of really good teams across the sport of college football. To me, Mike Elko and Texas A&M, they feel a little bit different. And that's no surprise to many of y'all who've been rocking with the boys the last couple of weeks. I am buying a ton of stock in this football team. There are two different reasons that in my mind Texas A&M has separated themselves. Now, number one, I think they're the most complete team in the sport. Like, I look at their ability to run the football. I look at their ability to be explosive in the passing attack. I look at their ability to get after the passer. I look at the improvements we've seen from this Texas A&M secondary and say, wait, where's the flaw? Where's the weakness in this football team? Because guess what? There really isn't one. This is the other reason that separates. This is the reason that if you're a Texas A&M fan, this is the reason I would be really damn excited about the next couple of weeks of football. This team, man, it feels like they just keep getting better as the season goes on, and I cannot stress how important I think that narrative is. Go back to Ohio State last year. Look, Ohio State in the regular season, they were good. I don't know if I'd say they were great. They turned into a great football team as they rolled into the college football playoffs and they won a national championship. If you want to win a national championship in this sport, you have to get better as the season goes on. You have to play your best football in December and January. To me, it feels like Texas A&M is on their way. Like they're a really good football team right now that is capable of winning a national championship, but it seems like every time they go out, they get better as a team. I think they're coming off their two most complete and dominant performances we've seen all season long. You go on the road and boat race LSU. You go on the road and dominate a very solid Missouri football team. This team's getting better. Now, what I want to do with this episode, I want to dive into some of the biggest improvements that we've seen from this football team. You know, we've talked plenty about Marcel Reed, and we've talked plenty about Cassius Howell and Casey and Mario Craver, a lot of other guys that are starting to step up on this roster. Before we get into it, as always, the Texas A&M fans, appreciate you guys, man. Many of y'all know how much fun I've had talking about this football team. The amount of support that this fan base has shown the boys has been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it now. To the Texas A&M fans who've been rocking with the boys way back to the month of September, we started buying stock into this team, but we had some question marks that remained, right? Most notably on offense, it was who's going to be that wide receiver three. You know, like it felt at times that Texas A&M was maybe a little too reliant on Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion. And we said, hey, if we can get that wide receiver three rolling, that kind of changes this offense. Well, I would argue that Ashton Bethel-Roman is starting to become that guy. Last 3 games, 8 targets, 7 catches, buck 42 touchdowns. That's what you're looking for from your wide receiver three. Look, Ashton Bethel-Roman is never going to be the guy that this offense is centered around this year. I think in the future, very well it could be, but not this year. Can he be a guy that when he gets his matchups can go out and win those matchups and change the game? We've seen that. You know, I think the biggest example was that first touchdown that Texas A&M scored. It was 3rd and goal from the 3. They split out Casey and Mario to the same side on the right side of the formation. Missouri's bracketing them. And you're going to see that all year. I mean, every single defensive coordinator is going to give Casey and Mario Craver the red Sharpie treatment. How can we take those two cats away? Well, we know defensive coordinators are going to do that. And so we needed that wide receiver 3 to become a guy that when they got the one-on-one matchup, when they got the ideal matchup, could they go out and win and make plays for this football team? Ashton Bethel-Roman creates separation, catches the touchdown, and kind of gets that Texas A&M team rolling on the road against Missouri. That is exactly what we need from this kid. And he has slowly started to give Texas A&M that over the last couple of weeks. It's a massive development for this Texas A&M offense. I would throw in the tight ends too, man. They got a bunch of different tight ends that can do different things. I mean, especially Theo and Nate Borkisher, Mike O'Reilly a little bit too, but especially Nate, hammers, and I mean hammers in the run game, but are also providing a lot of the best way to describe it, probably like clutch moments, right? On those 3rd and 5s, can you separate, find the soft spot in the zone, and move the chains? Like these tight end, I don't think there's a difference making tight end in this room, but they're providing a ton of value in moments they need to provide value. You're getting help from your role players. You have your studs, right? Mario Craver and Casey, they're both going to get their touches every single game. You needed other guys to step up. You're starting to see that. How about this? And this is another separator. Like as we go through, especially in this conference, when teams start to get banged up, ain't nobody going to be healthy rolling into the college football playoffs, especially if you're coming out of the SEC. You got to be deep. And in this era of the sport, with the transfer portal, it's really hard to hold on to your depth. Texas A&M's depth on the offensive line, I mean, it's legit. It starts with Trey Zune, has to go fill in at center. I mean, that's an all SEC left tackle. Been playing like that all year, and they said, hey, we're going to go play at center because we need you. Trey Zune plays fine at center. I don't think that's the biggest surprise. I think the big surprise for a lot of us that follow this team pretty closely is Ruben Fothery comes in against legitimate NFL edge rushers that Missouri has. He was really damn good. I mean, having that ability to shuffle the deck and rotate guys and not have a significant drop off. If you told me on Friday afternoon that Ruben Fothery was going to have to come in and play a lot at left tackle, I would have been a little bit concerned. Ruben Fothery looked awesome. That depth is legit on the offensive line. You got 7, 8, maybe 9 guys that you trust to play quality football. There's a lot of teams that are football playoff teams that barely have 5 guys that they trust, much less 7, 8, 9. Texas A&M has that. I think that matters. The last thing that I'll say is Marcel Reed. And was Marcel Reed perfect against Missouri? No, the thing that continues to stand out to me about Marcel Reed is his command of the offense. It feels elite. That pocket presence, finding his answers quickly. Marcel Reed, we knew this was a football game where can I backtrack real quick? Because I had one other note I wanted to say on the offensive line. Then we'll get into Marcel Reed. Do you just rest Armaj Reed Adams for the rest of the year? And it's not necessarily because guess what I'm trying to say is Armaj Reed Adams has not really felt like himself all year. I think it's very clear that he is playing through some significant injuries. Maybe you just try to get him 100% healthy before the college football playoffs, because what we just learned is that the drop off without Armaj Reed Adams, it's not going to be a lot, right? I mean, you kick Trey Zune in the guard, slide Mark Naboo out to guard, Ruben Fothery a tackle. I wonder if they give Armaj Reed Adams a little bit time to just heal up and try to get him back to what he was last year, because that's another reason this Texas A&M team can take another step. I think Armaj Reed Adams has been solid. I don't think he's been that potential first-round NFL draft pick that a lot of us thought he was going to be. We'll see how they play that. Now, Marcel Reed, again, and this is another reason that I'd be excited if I'm a Texas A&M fan is Marcel Reed's in the Heisman conversation, and rightfully so, by the way. I still think he can get better. Like, there are still some consistency things that you see from him, especially with the accuracy, that you think can improve. But the one thing that just is so obvious, that this kid's command of the offense and his ability to get the ball out quick, really, really impressive. And you have to give Colin Klein a ton of credit too. Like we going into that Missouri game on the road, we knew this was a game where Marcel Reed could not revert back to what he was as a redshirt freshman and hold on to the football and drop his eyes. Average time to throw was 2.4 seconds. That ball was out really dang quick for Texas A&M on Saturday. And I think that has a lot to do with Marcel Reed's development. I think you got to give a ton of credit to Colin Klein getting Marcel Reed those answers as a play caller. Defensive side of the football, I was thinking about this a lot, and I'm ready to say it. Okay. Texas A&M flipped a switch late September, and they became one of the best. They're currently the best third down defense in the country. What was the result of that change? Yes, maybe you clean some things up in terms of what you were doing on third downs. Normally, the bigger storyline when you're talking about successful third down defenses, it's normally what happens on first and second down. Damian Sanford is not a perfect player. Like there are still, so very similar to Marcel Reed, there are still some things from a consistency standpoint that Damian Sanford can get better at. his playmaking ability, 8.5 TFLs, 3.5 sacks, his ability to create negative plays, I think it's changed this defense. And I don't think it's a coincidence as we've started to ramp up the amount of snaps Damian Sanford's played. All of a sudden, Texas A&M becomes elite on third downs. It's because you're winning on first and second, man. You're knocking teams off schedule, second and 12, third and 10s. A large part is Damian Sanford. You saw that show up again against Missouri. If you can win on first down the way Texas A&M is at times and create negative plays second and 12s, you put yourself in a really good spot to be successful on third downs. And I think a large part of that is Damian Sanford's playmaking ability at the linebacker spot. Those negative plays that he is able to routinely create every single week, monster storyline. And then Tyreek Chappelle, Mike Elko talked about this in his press conference, and we talked about Tyreek Chappelle being one of the more important players on the football field for Texas A&M against Missouri, because that's where Missouri's best wide receiver was in Kevin Coleman. Kevin Coleman had a quiet game. That was really the answer. If Missouri was going to struggle through the air, it probably had to do with Kevin Coleman not being very productive, and Tyreek Chappelle was that guy. Mike Elko said in the press conference, look, I think he was a lot more important than a lot of us realized last year when he went out with the injury. All of a sudden, Texas A&M looked a little bit lost in the secondary when Tyreek Chappelle wasn't on the football field. They've been quietly really, really good. Des Ricks has also taken a freaking monster step in the right direction. That Des Ricks and Will Lee, how many boundary cornerback duos in this conference are we taking over them? Like maybe at LSU with Monster Delane and DJ Pickett, maybe at Alabama with Xavier Brown and Dejoun Lee. Texas A&M's right up there. And we knew Will Lee was that guy. We needed a little bit more consistency, and I loved what Mike Elko did. Mike Elko brought in Julian Humphrey from Georgia. Said, hey, Des Ricks, you got some competition. You got to take a step if you want to play for this football team. Des Ricks responded, man. Good on Mike Elko and good on Des Ricks. Broader takeaways that I want to talk about is three different things. One, the roster building and the mentality of this football team. Number one, the mentality of this football team, they don't let things snowball. One of the more impressive sequences that I've seen from Texas A&M on the year was when they had a couple of really, really bad plays in a short amount of time against LSU. They dominated that first half, and they went into the locker room losing that football game because of that bad sequence. They respond. This team's competitive character feels a little bit different in year two with Mike Elko. The other thing I'll say is that the roster building and the roster management has been elite. You're recruiting the high school ranks really well. You're developing at an extremely high level, but you're also retaining really important football players. Now, I look at a guy like Reuben Owens and say Reuben Owens had every reason in the world to go transfer going into year three. Former five-star running back that's behind a guy like Le'Veon Moss. You keep him around, Le'Veon Moss goes down. Rubo, he's been huge for Texas A&M in the month of October and November. What about a guy like Reuben Fothery? And Reuben Fothery is a redshirt senior that is not a starting offensive lineman for Texas A&M, but he stays on the team and has to go in and play a lot of football on the road against Missouri with NFL caliber edge rushes, and Reuben Fothery's up for the task, man. And then you use the portal so effectively. And some of these names that are highlighted in red, Deion Hayes, Tyler Onedium, obviously Casey and Mario Craver on the offensive side of the football. Texas A&M did not go to the portal and grab 30 guys. But the 15, I think it was 14 guys that they did end up getting, like 7 of them are changing this football team. 2 of them, and Mario Craver and Casey, are the most 2 important players on this football team. I love how you're retaining your talent. You're making really, really impactful portal additions without overturning your whole roster. That's how you're supposed to do it in the sport, man. Mike Elko is getting those dividends paid off. Close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. We got a lot more to talk about Texas A&M over the next couple of weeks. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.